Past Summit 2022, please welcome from SQL Server Central, Steve Jones.
How's everybody doing today? Good? Been a long week here. We've been out there having fun, learning from everybody, seeing lots of sessions. Hopefully you've learned a tremendous amount this week and you've had a great time out here at the conference. I know I've had a lot of fun. It's been wonderful coming back to Seattle, seeing all of you in person, and welcome all of you online. I know I haven't seen you online, but hopefully you've had a good time here as well. There's been a lot of memories and fantastic times that we've had here this week, as well as in the past. And so for me, I like to look back a little bit. That's one of those things that's important to me, going back. Now, before I get started, we are offering the chance for you to extend your access online if you'd like to, as a special today. So it's Community Day here. It's Community Friday. And so that's the code if you want to extend your access Community Friday. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to see those sessions that you couldn't see live in person or you couldn't stream online. So I've been a community guy for most of my life, and today is Community Day. When we set the conference up last year, we made the decision that we wanted to have a community keynote on Friday so that somebody from our ranks would come up here and talk about something that was of interest to us, as opposed to another vendor or somebody, announcing lots of things. It's been 21 years I've been running SQL Server Central. Andy Warren, Brian Knight started that site with me in 2001, and through the years, it's been kind of an amazing community. When we built this site, the goal was to help other people become better at their jobs, just like many people had helped us in the past, helped us grow and change. And so through the years, we've made a lot of effort to embrace everybody out there and try to teach them as much as we could and learn from them. And many of you out there have helped as well. You've been part of this community. It wasn't me, it wasn't Andy, it wasn't Brian, but thousands of you have been out there sharing your knowledge with everyone else in the community. And that's how we grow. That's how we become stronger. And that's why this community is amazing. And when Redgate purchased SQL Server Central, they continue that. They continue to allow me to run it very independently. I know there's advertising on there now that wasn't there before, but really they let me run it independently. And so I still mostly run this as a community site where I get articles and questions and scripts and things from the community that we share and try to help everyone grow and become better at their job. One of those examples was SQL Saturday. Andy, Brian, and I have been coming here for 20 years. And in 2007, we wanted to bring some of this magic of the summit back to local communities because we know not everyone can come here. Those of us that get the opportunity to be here are very blessed, and we appreciate that. So for the record, I'll say here, I thought this was a horrible idea when we did this. And so in 2007, we had one event in Orlando. I was against it, but I supported Andy and Brian. We set it up, we got it going. And then within a year, Andy had proved me wrong, that we had many events all around the world. And in that first year in 2008, Andy and I had a conversation I remember vividly. I'm on the phone in Colorado, he's in Florida, and we're going, could we actually run 10 events in a year? And our concern was, did we have enough speakers? Because back then, this was one of the few places you could come speak about SQL Server. And within a year, you had proved us wrong. So many of you stepped up to come share your knowledge that we not only worried about 10 events, that within 2 years we had gotten well above 10, and then things exploded. We handed it off to PASS, and really I can't thank Carla Landrum and Catherine Wilhelmsen enough because they really drove us to that 100 events a year. So if I could I get a little round of applause for them? They are amazing. Catherine's down here. If you see her today, thank her. Because the reason we got to 117, 104, 113 events was Carla and Catherine really making things go, along with a lot of you. And so I'm hoping that in the future we can do better and we can continue things moving forward. I got Redgate to donate SQL Saturday away. This is our official post. You can link through and see our articles of incorporation. But we set up an independent foundation because it is a community asset, and we want that to be clear. So Andy and I run this along with a number of prominent community members on our board, but we've made it independent. We've had a bunch of events this year, and I'm hoping for more next year. I'm hoping we come out of this pandemic. And I want virtual events as well. It's really not that hard. I think there's plenty of SQL Saturday organizers here that would say it's work, but it's really not that much. So I'd love to see more of you bring this to your local community and share your knowledge with others. Now I want to thank our sponsors because they drive SQL Saturday forward. They drive this event forward everywhere. So you have this chance today to go see the sponsors one more time and enter some fabulous contests. There will be prize drawings today at 2 o'clock. And a really special thanks to AWS. They're sponsoring this keynote today, but they're not coming up here to talk. So that's really a huge step forward for them to come up and say, we're going to sponsor this keynote without putting a speaker on stage. They do have a fantastic TV you can win, so the booth is right outside these curtains when you leave. Please feel free to stop by and enter. Before we get to the community keynote today, we're going to have a little entertainment. I don't know how many of you know this gentleman, but he's fantastic. Homer has, he's been working in this industry a long time. You know, he's got a bachelor's and a master's in computer science, a lot of experience, but he loves music. And so he's here to give us a little taste of what he does. He's performed all the way from Microsoft in Redmond to Technology Square in Atlanta. So let's put our hands together for Killer DVA. Homer McEwen, all the way from A-Town.
Steve Jones, what a great guy. So my name is Homer Mack, AKA Killer DBA, and I have a song titled Hug a DBA, which is titled after my album, Hug a DBA. And I did it because if you're a DBA, feel good about yourself, hug yourself. We are the protectors of data. Data is the biggest asset for companies. It makes the money. It retains the customers and grabs the customers. It's what's happening right now. So without further ado, here is Hug a DBA. And hey, if you're a DBA, hug yourself. Hug a DBA. Here we go. Hug a DBA. Yeah. Okay. Hug a DBA. And if you feel good, you can dance. Come on. What's up, PASS? Data Community Summit 2022. If you feel good, you can get up. I see you out there. I see you moving a little bit. Yeah. Check it. Okay. Hug a DBA today. Database management, yes, that is the key. I remember back in the day when they treated us like kings. Today is not the same. Oh wait, is it just me? The respect level isn't quite where it should have used to be. Did you forget the install and the maintenance for me? Setting up authentication with the right security. All the tuning and the fuming because of your messed up query. Tuning, troubleshooting, backup, recovery, I can see it's the database's fault. Do you agree? Because the application's flawless and the database is evil. Wait, I have a trace showing otherwise. Your developer did not specify fully qualified. Not to mention that I keep this thing up all the time. SLA on point, 99.9. When it comes to store procedures, functions, triggers, I don't play. Give me kudos, coffee, gift cards, and that's all I got to say. So, hey, hug. Did you guys catch some of those words? Oh, thank you. Kimberly Tripp, ladies and gentlemen. I just got a hug from her. I feel good. Hey, hug a DBA. Hey, hug a. What? Hug a DBA. Check it. Oh. Hug a DBA today. Adding features, updating. I'm patching all the time. There's always something new. This technology is flying. There's corruption, disasters, hardware, resources lacking, capacity planning. Hard due date from the upper management. Migrations lead to migrants if performances are dormant. The DBA had better have his ducks all in a row. I mean tuple. You never catch me pointing fingers at you unless I diligently diagnose the issues with the users. A lot of things. Notification from all the monitoring, data replication, compliance from all the licensing, theory and design, queries that'll blow your mind. Super user on every operating system you can find. Communicator between user and the developer, always in training so that I'm one step ahead of you. When it comes to storage in the cloud, I don't play. Big data plus AI equals Hug a DBA. Hug a DBA. Hey, PASS. It's so good. I'm so honored to be here. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of friends in the data community. Hug a DBA. Hey. Hug a DBA. Hug a DBA today. And don't forget it. Do that. Thank you. So, as a DBA, and I've been a DBA for over 25 years, guys, and we wear many hats, right? So for this next song, I am going to do a little something here. For those that know, Dallas, right? SQL Server 2022. Here comes the song with the new features about SQL Server 2022. And I want to give a shout out to Bob Ward, David Pless, Jay, and all those cool principal architects that gave me insight on what they thought was important to put in this song. So without further ado, SQL Server 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, again, like I said, my name is Homer Mack, aka Killer DBA, and this is a Microsoft SQL Server 2022 song. Shout out Pass, Data Community Summit. It's so good to be here. Let's get into some of these new features. Y'all ready? I need some participation though. When I say SQL, you say server, SQL. SQL. When I say 20, you say 2, 20. 20. Do more for less. Yeah. Do more for less. Oh, yeah. Do more for less. 22. Do more for less. Hey. Managed instance for disaster recovery. Azure enabled. What a great discovery. For the first time, you can now restore your Azure database back to SQL Server. Synapse Link analytics are seamless. Mitigating ETL. Oh, I need this. Visibility of the data lineage. Microsoft Purview with the governance. The least vulnerable database in the industry. Ledger helps protect data integrity. Policies insight streamline your auditing. Ledger can harness the power by using blockchain. Microsoft now leads the industry in performance and availability. Built-in query intelligent capabilities. Query store, and of course the IQP. Do more for less. SQL Server. Hey, SQL Server 2022. Do more for less. SQL Server. Yes, do more for less. Hey. Cloud connected database through Management Studio. Most consistent data platform you will ever know. Intel Quick Assist, backup compression, extending to SQL with JSON. Always encrypted enhancement, buffer pool parallel scans in. Digital trust is established. Automatic digest storage. You can back it up or restore it to Azure now. I gotta say one more thing about codename Dallas, aka 16. I'll be happy with my hands-free temp DB. Actually, Bob Ward, can I get a copy? Please give me a key, possibly for free. I see many new features that I really need. I'm on the edge of my seat, like Edge to Cloud. I can run SQL anywhere and everywhere now. For those that know, Dallas, I know some of you guys are my age. You remember Dallas. Code name. Let's go. Do more for less. Do more for less. SQL Server. Do more for less. SQL Server 2022. Do more for less. Do more for less. Do more for less. SQL Server 2022. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Fantastic, Homer. Thank you very much. And for Killer DBA, all right. All right, so now it's time for today's keynote. This keynote today is for the community, by the community. It's a friend of mine I've known a very, very long time. I've been blessed and honored to spend time with her. Our birthdays are actually a day apart, which is kind of funny to know that. But she's been working with SQL Server longer than I have. From Chicago to Microsoft to now her own company that she's had for many, many years. She's been an MVP forever, I think. Sorry, Kimberly, but much longer than me. She loves performance tuning. She loves indexing. If you read her blog, she has taught many of us how to be better at our jobs. One of the true icons of our industry. Please put your hands together for Kimberly Tripp.
Good morning. So, when they asked me to give a session, I thought, Friday morning, can I do cardinality estimation or indexes or stats? And they kind of looked at me like, yeah, no. Hangovers, exhaustion. Let's do something a little bit lighter. So, I decided to look back, and I cannot even tell you how fun it was for me to look back over. I mean, I started working with SQL Server when I was 2. So, you know, when I looked back over these 33 years, I was like, wow, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened. So, and I think for some of you that might be hoarders, I'm going to prove to you that I'm a hoarder too. I have, in fact, this shirt, I can't even believe it, SQL 95. This was the SQL Server 6.0 shirt from 1995. I actually have I guess I'll do my watch now. This is a 421 for NT watch with the SQL Server logo on it. So I'm telling you, I have so many amazing memories, and it's all because of you and the community. And so I'm very excited and honored that Redgate asked me to do this. The reason why, as Steve said, in fact, yesterday he said, yeah, Kimberly's been working with SQL Server since SQL Server for the Abacus. And I'm like, thanks, Steve. Thanks for that. I think back, I was MCP 128, 2 power 7, right, in 1991. I actually started teaching SQL Server in 1991. And to make you laugh, I actually taught SQL Server on overhead transparencies with an overhead projector. And when they would send us a new update for the class, they were 11 pounds of transparencies that I'd have to travel with, you know, and let me tell you, you never wanted to drop those. Because if you, I mean, there were no page numbers or anything on them, so you dropped those bad boys and you would spend hours trying to get everything back together, an absolute nightmare. So 2 things I did for the survey, because I really wanted to be community focused, is I asked for some input from some folks in the community, and I ended up getting some great slides. I don't have enough time to provide all of them in the session, but I strongly urge you to download my slide deck, which I haven't uploaded yet. I'll upload after the session, and there's actually a bunch of community slides. And I also did a survey. I ended up sending the survey to a lot of my friends and Twitter, so I think the results were a little skewed on the survey, so I'll mention that. But as far as the community folks, I really want to thank these folks that took some time to basically give you some words of advice, words of wisdom, career advice, favorite features, things that you should look at, and just a lot of their experience in the industry as well. So some of these I'll present, and then all of them are at the end. And a couple of us tell our stories about how we got into databases, so it's great fun, okay? Now, as far as this session, since I do have some memorabilia, I decided to rope in my lovely assistant. So I would like to introduce Mr. Paul Randall.
How did I get roped into doing this? I have no idea.
This is great. I almost can't even be on stage without him anymore.
Exactly.
We need a little bit of banter. Where are you going?
I'm going to sit here.
Okay, so.
It's not my session. I get to relax.
I know. He's just going to sit. He's my Vanna White or my Silent Bob. Somebody said we were Kay and Silent Bob, which I thought was pretty funny if you're a Clerks fan, so I don't know if you are. So anyway, SQL Server over these last 30 years has been an amazing adventure. And so I put in some slides, and like I told you, I had so much fun kind of looking back, even over Microsoft and SQL Server over these 30 years. So I want to talk very briefly about the early days and information innovation, all the things that have happened from sending questions and interacting, receiving information and data, and then storing data and keeping up with all of this technology. So I'll start with the early days, the original Microsoft logo. 1975, they had a revenue of $16,005, 2 employees. 1975. And what becomes interesting is if you look over the 15 years to 1990, which is right around SQL Server's start, SQL Server was based originally on OS/2, and OS/2 was a joint agreement basically between IBM and Microsoft. They made an agreement in '85. They came out with OS/2 in '87. The Microsoft mouse, I mean, there were mice out there as far as devices, but the Microsoft mouse was '83. And by January 13th, 1988, Ashton Tate got in the picture with SQL Server and Sybase. Sybase did the original port to OS/2, and then we had SQL Server basically in 1988, or 1989 officially, May. Now, look at the revenue. 1975, they made $16,000, but by 1990, they were $1 billion business. And what's amazing, and I have it later in the slides, but in 2000, SQL Server was a $1 billion business within Microsoft. So it's amazing if you think of how far we've gone, especially when I was getting ready for this, right? I talked to a few different people like Bob Ward, and we were talking about when he first started at Microsoft in 1993, sorry, Bob, 1993. Oh, I'm gonna get in so much trouble there.
Yeah.
Is Bob here? Sorry, Bob. 1993. SQL Server for Windows NT had just come out, but of course nobody was using it yet, so he spent his first 2 or 3 months on CompuServe, right? How many of you remember that? Debugging OS 2 because SQL Server 1.0 and 1.1 ran as a single process, a single thread in ring 0, no less. So, I mean, if you look back at that, you're kind of like, why did any of us decide that this was going to be our future? You know, it's like, what were we thinking there? So, but 1990, they released 1.1. That was my first version. 92 and 93, they came out with the OS 2 releases, 4.2a, 4.2b. And then they decided to sync up with Sybase's numbers, which were 4.2. And then SQL Server for Windows NT came out. And I think that's when a lot of us really started to work with it. And I'm telling you, talk about a hoarder. This is SQL Server 4.2.1 for Windows NT with the old logo, just like the watch's logo. And it just brings back such interesting memories for me. So, but that's 4.2.1. In 1993, that's when that came out. 95 was SQL 6.0, so SQL 95 was the code name for that. 1996 was 6.5, and by 1998, we came out with 7.0. And the thing that's interesting to note about that is Sybase did the port to OS 2, Microsoft did the port to NT, and around the 6.5 days, that's when the relationship essentially separated. And 7.0, amazingly, was a total rewrite of the storage engine and virtually a complete rewrite of the relational engine as well. And at that point, they weren't sharing any of the code with Sybase any longer. So it's an interesting history there. Now, I asked, as I told you, all the folks in the survey, when did they begin using SQL Server? And I told you the results were a little bit skewed because and I don't even know how this happened, but I got about 300 responses, and I got 65 that started on 6.5. I do not know how that happened. It cracked me up, though, and I swear I didn't fudge the numbers. That's actually what I got. But how many of you really started with 6.5? I see some familiar faces. That's amazing.
Wow, look at that.
That is amazing to me. I mean, it's not 22% like some of my friends and so forth. So the point, though, is it's amazing that so many of us have stayed in this community for so long. And I don't know about you, but part of why I've stayed in this community is because of the community, right? It's because of the interaction. When I asked for comments at the end of the survey about, you know, what do you love about SQL Server? Probably 95% of them were the community, SQL family, the ability to find information, blog posts, free resources for that matter, on some of the technologies and things that we're interested in. So I love that. I was kind of not entirely surprised because, again, I sent this out, so it was people I knew, but not too many people started on Azure, right? They usually started with an earlier version of SQL and then moved to Azure, so that wasn't that surprising. But I just thought the 6.5 one was quite funny. So anyway, I don't have a lot on this survey, but a few things that I think are really cool. So quickly, I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I'm telling you, I could have had 100 slides on this section alone. I started kind of spelunking through some of my old memorabilia and looking over these last 30 years, conveying information, receiving information, storing information. How have things changed? I mean, has it really been that radical in the last 30 years? And it's kind of amazing, it really has. In 1990, we were dealing with postal mail, print, right? We weren't using email except at some large corporations and universities. We were making a lot of phone calls, VHS tapes. I remember when I worked at Microsoft, we'd have a Friday morning breakfast meeting. Someone would bring donuts or bagels. We'd sit for 2 hours and watch VHS tapes about SQL Server internals that had been recorded by one of the other teams. And it was just, really interesting to think back to that. And now we've got so much information, so much more easily available. And I already mentioned the overhead projectors and the heavy transparencies. I can't believe I lugged that stuff around, you know, literally on trains and planes and automobiles, getting to different events and so forth. So the phone, right? How many of you could even use this? Okay, I know a lot of people in here are probably okay with it, but they bring this to millennials and they're like, you know, what do? They don't know about dialing and being stuck against the wall, right? VHS tapes, the old projectors. I actually bought on eBay an old projector, and I was gonna bring it.
I was gonna come on with a little creaky AV cart, pull up a screen and pretend we were gonna present.
And then we were gonna put the first slide on, and I bought one, and he never responded and never shipped it to me. So then I tried to buy another one, and we couldn't get it here in time, but it just cracked me up. Like, you can still find these things and buy them, although it's not very successful. PowerPoint. I know a lot of you are like, PowerPoint is death, right? But for me, going from transparencies to PowerPoint, and now especially today with PowerPoint, there are so many things I can do so much more easily, like editing slides. I don't have to carry things around. I'm a big fan of PowerPoint when it's used effectively. I don't want you to read the slides, right? You want to have your feelings and what you want to convey there. Give people something they can take home with them, but you know, you don't sit there and go, 1992, PowerPoint.
Well, some people do.
Well,
nobody here presenting them.
I know. And that's the thing. The energy that the community has is amazing, and I love this. But this was 1992, so for 1991, I was carrying transparencies, and it wasn't even until 92 that they had the video out. So it was about 93 when we started using PowerPoint in our slides in our classrooms and stuff. So it is really funny to think back. In fact, I had totally forgotten, I mean, maybe intentionally forgotten, having used transparencies. So let's talk about today. Now, I can't even believe how many places I can find information about how much data there is in a day, but I just want to focus on a couple of key points during each of these little sections, and I'm going to focus on the one that may no longer be.
They reckon it might shut down by Monday.
I know, and the good news is we are such a in-tune community that even if we don't stay on Twitter, if we go somewhere else on some other social media, I know we'll find each other. But what's amazing to me is that there were, at some point, 500 million tweets a day. And I think that's really cool. Now, SQL Help is a nice, I mean, it's not always easy to ask your question in 140 characters or less, right? But if you ask your question, it's amazing. 24 hours a day, there's probably someone somewhere in the world that's online, that's looking occasionally at SQL Help and can at least give you some insight, a resource. There were 47 tweets to SQL Help, and they're all questions in the week before pass, which I know doesn't sound like a huge amount, but from an instant gratification perspective, it is one of the ways that you can quickly get something shortly answered. But check this out, emails. 294 billion emails, remember, per day.
Holy crap.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, that's probably, some of those are spam, right? But, you know,
but still.
I know, it's craziness.
300 billion.
What was interesting, though, is I started researching this more, and I started to find out that these facts, for most of this information, even though this was produced, I think, in 2021, these are mostly 2019 numbers. But check out those. 320 billion emails a day by 2021, and 306 billion by 2020. But get this. There are 3.9 billion people that use email, and the new number for 2022 is that there are 333.2 billion emails sent per day. Per day. Like, that is an unbelievable, I mean, working in data, dealing with data, I look at that number, and it's just a crazy number to me. Wait till we get to the data numbers.
Your inbox is already tens of thousands.
Yeah, let's not go there. Now, in terms of receiving information and communicating and trying to get your questions answered, it's really the same list, right? Print media, phone calls. In fact, Paul has a great little story. In fact, do you want to tell it now?
Yeah, sure. So in 1989, I was 17 years old. I was a senior at high school in Glasgow, Scotland. And the Times newspaper ran a crossword competition for schools. And one of the clues was the name of a lake in a certain Native American language, and I can't remember the lake or the language. And the school library in my local library didn't help. So I wrote a letter to a professor in Chicago asking her to help me. And she replied a month later, well past the date that the crossword competition was done, and I got my data. And it was about 20 bytes long. So that data transfer rate was a byte every 36 hours. And if you think about it now, almost the entire corpus of human knowledge is on your cell phone, accessible on your cell phone, instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back to modems. When I was on the SQL team in 1993, we released a tool called Transfer Manager on CompuServe. And that was how, we got that product out there and we interacted. And like I said, and Bob was doing service and support on CompuServe for OS2. And CDs and cassette tapes. Like, you might not think that Microsoft ever used that, but I've got some pictures here. Like, from a print magazine, I've got that here. I mean, this is literally the first article I ever wrote, SQL Forum Journal. It was $12 a month in 1992, and I wrote fault tolerance options for SQL Server 4.2. And just for the record, that was 4.2 OS2. So, you look back at that and you're like, wow, okay, this is a little bit old. Or this one, I can't believe I have this, my SQL Server 6.5. I mean, I literally still have that one copy of that course, so not very exciting. And then this, surprisingly, Tech Ed 1996, this was my very first Tech Ed, they gave out all the session recordings on cassette tapes. And then the materials were on CD, and that was already 1996, right? So you start thinking about that, and it's the amount of information we have access to so much more easily now is crazy. As Paul mentioned, his story, he's already told that data transfer speed is ridiculous, but it's kind of like modems and some of the days where things were slow, although a lot faster on a modem than this. And in fact, there's a hidden slide in there. I was a little bit hesitant to play modem sounds because I figured it might invoke some PTSD for a few of us. But I found this great site that literally has a 300 baud modem all the way up to a 56K baud modem, and all the sounds and all the exchange, and it's awesome. So I put the link in there. I encourage you to go back to the old times and listen to some of those. But it cracked me. I mean, I told you, when I started doing and setting up this session, I spent hours just, as some of us do, spelunking in the internet, following links and so forth. So I actually have a tremendous number of links and hidden slides and so forth. But yeah, I love that number, 1 byte per 36 hours. Luckily, our modem speeds were nowhere near that slow. Now, going back to a day in data, I want to zoom in a little bit to the amount of searches and how you guys get information. And this is interesting, again, because these numbers are from 2019, but the number of searches in a day, 5 billion, the number on Google, 3.5, these are old. I started, like I said, looking around, trying to get the numbers from Google specifically, but in 2021, their stats were 90,000 searches per second, which is an unbelievable number to me, and 7.81 billion searches per day on Google alone, not including other search engines that are probably much higher than Google. I'm kidding. I don't want to get in trouble. But the survey stats, when I asked folks, how do you get information, either new information or help on different topics that you're struggling with, 46%, they always hit Google first. 44% frequently use Google. I had actually a couple of people that said they rarely or never use Google, which was quite shocking for me. I'm not sure who those people are. Maybe there's some engine folks that just don't need help. But it was 90% start basically with Google, right? Or start with a search engine. And 94% will do that when they need help. And I think this is amazing. I mean, as Paul mentioned, the entire corpus of human knowledge is on the internet. Now, it's not always right, but it's super useful. And I always tell people, Go to one, get some insight. Don't take everything you read as gospel, right? Take it as a starting point. It's the start for it depends, right? You hit one website, you get some opinions, and you're like, okay, this sounds cool. I'm going to try this out. And just because you learn something, even if it is effective on one server, it doesn't necessarily mean that it should be the standard on all servers. So maybe get some second websites and spelunk around to see what other information is there. But this is amazing to me. Now, storing information, I have a couple of great links here that, let me tell you, you'll spend hours reading these if you're interested. The information age and the history of hard drives and the memory and storage. In fact, I stole a couple of slides to show you one or two of the things that I thought was just wow in terms of data. And I did go a little bit further back than 1990 on this one. Look at this, 1956. That there that's being delivered, going onto a plane, is 5 meg. 5 meg of storage. And IBM wouldn't even sell this. They would only rent it to you for $3,200 a month in 1956, which in today's dollars is 35 grand a month for 5 meg.
Wow.
And I think it was something like 600 pounds. I mean, it was some
Yeah, it's like
huge.
twice the size of this.
Yeah, I mean, it was just unbelievable. And another one that I thought was really cool was going to the moon. I know we always talk about this and think about this, but we went to the moon with 76K. We had 4K of RAM, 4 kilobytes of RAM, and 72K of ROM. But the most interesting thing about the ROM is its rope memory that had to be hand weaved into each of the endpoints to create the binary ones and zeros. And this is literally what it looked like. And then at the bottom, you can see the input module, you know, was about this big for 76K, right? So, okay, going forward again, 1989, this is actually how I got into databases. I have a story in the slides if you're really interested, but I worked for IBM and I was in marketing and I was a math computer science major in school, but communications design art minor. And I did an advert for IBM, and it was called the IBM Welcomes Whatever Back to School. Yeah, I still have copies of this. See, I told you I'm a total hoarder. In fact, I have like 15 copies of
No
this
wonder
thing.
your office is such a mess.
I know, it is. But yeah, you can even see like, what color is that one? Georgia Tech is kind of yellow, and then Cornell is kind of their burgundy, right? So we actually customized the brochures for the school name and the school colors, and I needed a database, right, to track all of that. So it was 1989, I used DataEase, and I basically tracked all the different branches we were printing for and what the colors were that we needed and everything, and it was really cool. And so the inside of the brochure looked like this. I mean, you can show it again if you want, but it had these different machines. And the one I want to highlight for a moment here is the lightning bolt. This was, look at those specs for a second, sorry. Look at those specs for a second. 4 meg of memory, 60 meg hard drive, 386. Lightning, right? But here's the real kicker. That bad boy was $4,699 in 1989, and in today's dollars, that would be $11,247 for 60 meg and 4 meg of memory. Can you even believe it? I mean, our watches, our health devices are better than this these days. You know, we have more in these than we went to the moon with. So I just think this is interesting, and I look back at some of these numbers. Thank goodness. The one place where shrinking is phenomenal, hard drives. And now, I don't think I brought the memory, but I had just changed over one of my laptops, and I went to 64 gig memory DIMMs, and I have like a 32 gig DIMM, right, that's, you know, this big, and it cracks me up thinking back to some of those hard drives and those platters. We have some platters at home, don't we?
I've got core memory at home.
Yeah, okay, yeah. See, it's not good, because both of us are kind of hoarders on this one. So, thankfully, storage is getting smaller, but the problem is data is just growing at unbelievable rates for all of you. And this means that VLDB techniques and strategies and performance tuning and storage and availability, like all of this is getting to be more challenging because so many businesses want to keep their data around longer. One of the things I love about 2022, right, is they know we're going to stay on premises for some of us for a while, but they're starting to provide the services so that we can do things like purview governance, right, or security with Defender by hooking into the Azure services. Don't worry, I'm not going to go crazy marketing-wise, but I think that's fantastic. Right? So I'm looking forward to these things that I can do that can make my databases much more effective without me having to do everything on the back-end server. So back to a day in data, these are some of the numbers that shocked me the most. What we're going to look at this time is the amount of data, just in general, that companies have. And I had to put this back on here because, heck, once we get beyond terabytes and petabytes, I'm kind of like, wait a minute, exabytes, where's Yoda? You know, anyway, that was a joke, sorry, but zettabytes and yottabytes. But 463 exabytes of data daily to be generated by 2025. That's the estimation. 463 exabytes. Like, it took me a second. I'm like, okay, wait, an exabyte is 1 million terabytes. So how does that translate? 463 million terabytes per day and 169 zettabytes per year.
How long would shrink take to do that?
Yeah, how long would shrink take, or CheckDB? How many indexes should I have on a table?
Exactly.
That's 169 zettabytes. Some of you might remember that from yesterday or from the workshop. But okay, so the point is these numbers are incredible, right? And thinking about some of these, we have to be thinking long-term about our data growth and our manageability and our availability. So these numbers are crazy to me. And I don't know why I have so many there. The next one, big data is not a fad. This slide shows the accumulated data across the universe in terms of the Earth, let's say. All right, the idea here though, 44 zettabytes, which is 44 billion terabytes. That's how much data we have across all of our businesses, everywhere. And it's just, these numbers are crazy to me. So I want to stress big data, even though that's kind of a buzzword. It's just, I mean, have any of you had databases that get smaller? I mean, intentionally? Okay. As opposed to accidentally, like, you know, I'm having this performance problem. If I delete the data, it's much faster. Right? That's not what I mean. But all of us are having to deal with more data, more users, more activity, performance issues. And I know it's funny because whenever Paul and I do performance-related classes, they always sell out, right? But when we do high availability, disaster recovery, security, people are like, when's the next perf class? You know, some people don't tend to care about some of those things until they have to, which is obviously sometimes too late. So I really want to stress that we have to think in terms of big data, in terms of privacy and governance. Obviously, with GDPR, some of you have had to do that a lot sooner than others. The security, the vulnerability with things like SQL Defender, reliability, availability. There's so many things. Usability of our data, right? Power BI and being able to present information effectively so that the data can be understood. And of course, we need to make sure that our AI is accurate as we're starting to analyze our data. We don't want to have spurious correlations. Oh, that's a great website, by the way. Anyway, I won't show anything from that. But these are very important. And the thing that's nice to me is that SQL Server has focused on these things, and it's made some of these things a lot easier. So let me talk about SQL Server's innovations over the years. Just to give you, again, that insight into the revenue, SQL Server was not a huge seller until we got to about SQL 7.0, which was 1998. And you start to see in 98, 350 million in revenue, 99, 600 million. And actually, by 2000, they were almost a $1 billion business. And it was really 2000, 2001, when SQL Server 2000, in fact, we have SQL Server 2000. This is actually Paul's. And funny, this one is shrink-wrapped. Mine wasn't shrink-wrapped. So I'm like, oh, we'll bring yours, because it's actually so pristine and shrink-wrapped. And then look at this. I've got the enterprise manager manual in Japanese from when I did one of my first PASS conferences, that one. It was PASS 2001, and Kaylin and I were the only two, I believe, speakers there from the US. Everybody else was local, which makes sense. We had to have translators and everything, but it was great fun. So yeah, I look back at some of those days and it just cracks me up. But 2000 was released in November of 2000, and that's when the revenue really started to become a major core business of Microsoft. They were a $1 billion business within a $24 billion business, right? And I mean, you look at that from 1975 to 2000, in 25 years, they went up to almost 25 billion, right? Pretty impressive. I wouldn't mind a company that did that, right? So just reminding you of these numbers. So now, 7.0, it's so funny. People are like, you're going to talk about 7.0? 7.0 was a massively interesting release. I remember at TechEd 98, I had a 6.5 box and a 7.0 box on stage, and I would do some operations that were really inefficient in 6.5, and then I would do them in 7.0, and I kid you not, people in the audience were like, oh, you know, like gasping at some of the changes. And this is where like index structures change, the page structures change. And the SQL team took a really hard look at what the structures needed in the old 2K page days, 6.0, 6.5, right? And they said, okay, we have 2K pages with a 32-byte header. We need more than that, so 64 bytes. And kind of the common joke was, I don't want to do this again before I retire, you know, from the storage engine guys. So it was like, yeah, we only need 64, let's make it 96, right? And they might not have needed that, but here we are, 20 plus, 30 plus years later, well, 20 plus from the 7.0 release, and we still have some of those same storage structures still working well for us and doing well. Yeah, there could be some changes, and there are across the product, but it's amazing to think of how forward-thinking the folks were when they designed for 7.0, right? And then 2000, Paul.
It wasn't me.
Did you change, most important, DBCC index defrag and online DBCC check DB? Yeah, I have a feeling somebody may have been in my slides here. I'm not sure they were the most important features of those releases. Index views, I laugh too, because people are like, oh, there's column store. Why the heck would you use an indexed view? But you want to make sure that you have a good feel for a variety of features in SQL Server, because even though some of these sound old, and even though there are some features that are newer and are better for a variety of scenarios, sometimes there are some specific scenarios where some of these features are still warranted. I still recommend index views. We still recommend defragging indexes and maintenance, even though I know some of you are like, we have solid state, we don't have to worry about that. You still have to worry about it, though, from a splitting, from a caching, from a logging perspective. Would you like to talk about any of your features here?
No.
So that was Shiloh. And then in 2005, man, we were 5 years between 2000 and 2005, and it was a huge launch event. They actually created this ready to rock, the CDs, right, that they, well, I guess these are probably DVDs by that time, of SQL Server and Visual Studio with all the licensing and stuff. It was great. We did a lot of the launch content and had a good time with that. And that's where we started creating what we called the eye test slides, right, where we'd like list every single feature that we could think about. We don't do this anymore. It's kind of crazy to think of all of the individual, features, but it was amazing to look at that 5-year development process and how much they were able to come out with that. So then,
let me tell a quick story.
Wait, Paul has a story.
So one of my developers is Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
And he went home to Shanghai in 2003, and he brought back a photo. The street vendors that were knocking off and selling SQL Server got annoyed that we took so long to put out SQL Server 2005. They created a fake SQL Server 2003 box that had SQL Server 2000 in it to try to get people to buy off their little stalls.
It's funny because I saw the same thing on some of the back streets in Malaysia when I was there for a tech ed. A bunch of us went out for dinner and went into some of the, where you can buy all the software and so forth. And it was funny because I'm like, I don't know that version. And it's funny that he had somebody on the team that saw that too. So, but SQL Server's innovations beyond that, obviously, I'm not going to geek out on all the features because we'd be here till like midnight tonight. Some of these features are amazing. I still use many of these across, you know, even into 2019 and 2022. I'll still be using many of these. You know, we look at some of these and we think, okay, wow, we've had data compression since Kilimanjaro, which was 2008 and 2008 R2. Since 2012, column store indexes, which are amazing. I mean, I still like read-only non-clustered column store indexes, even though as we got to 2014 and 2016, we can have read-write and we can have non-clustered and everything. I mean, it is amazing, but I still love some of these features, like looking all the way back. Are you sure you don't want to say anything about anything? Oh, he's going to be so quiet.
We could be here all day.
He's my silent Bob. So, all right. Look at 2016, 17, and 19, right? Query Store. I mean, if you're not looking at Query Store, you're crazy, right? And we've had that since 2016, and it's only gotten better and better in every release. For what you can see, the history, right? Getting some insight, and now with 2022, the dynamic max stop that they demoed in the keynote on Wednesday. So there's just so many cool features here. Now, I'm not going to geek out on 2022, but I did steal a few slides from the keynote. I actually was really impressed with Lindsay's demo. I didn't know that Lindsay had been working on something almost like the old English query, but working, that can give you sargable queries. Like, I always talk to folks that we have to allow ad hoc, right? And I kind of say, why? What happened? Obviously, the users weren't getting the information that they needed, so they said, we have to have ad hoc. So then, they're learning SQL. And of course, what do they learn? Select star and order by. There's some website somewhere that just says, if you want to learn SQL in 2 seconds, this is it. Select star, order by. Which, of course, as SQL Server processes that and starts to deliver that, since they did order by, what do they usually do? Cancel the query once they see the rows that they want. But heck, if they're going to put in a where clause or do anything to limit the set. But at least with tools like this, we can start to have more intelligent, sargable queries written by folks that do need ad hoc, but we don't want them to be inefficient. So I think that's really cool. But like I was saying, we've also got Purview for governance, right? And we've got these features that are going to make our lives easier for some of the stuff that maybe we don't want to learn all the ins and outs of, like GDPR, right? I mean, it is a lot of governance there. So, all right. The thing that I want to stress more than anything is you guys chose well. I mean, when I left Microsoft in '95, okay, one of my buddies said to me, you're going to do SQL Server consulting? You mean and .NET and other things. You're going to be a programmer. I'm like, no, I'm going to do data. You're never going to survive. And he literally said to me, he's like, you're crazy. You're never going to survive. And it's funny. Here I am, and I love it. And I still do and focus on data and the back end and the server. I always make the joke, I don't care what you do with the data, but I'm going to serve it, I'm going to make it available, I'm going to make it fast, I'm going to make it secure, right? And we have so many features. And you know, I did a search on Career Builder, and I think it was Saturday, 13,000 jobs right now with the words database administrator in it. That's how many database administrator jobs are available on Career Builder right now. It is kind of amazing, right? I mean, I think that this career path, I mean, it's not really sexy. Like, your kids don't, at 5 years old, go, I want to be a DBA. I mean, if they do.
Ours did.
I mean, ours, well, but they're not. Okay? One is in chemistry, and one wants to go into law. So, but yeah, I don't see that as a future for a lot of kids wanting to be DBAs. But talk about a stable environment that we've been able to grow. And one of the other things that was interesting, I didn't put the numbers in, and it's been talked about in the other keynotes as well, there's a lot of different databases being used out there. It's not just SQL Server. So you have this opportunity to understand and deal with the interaction among different databases and become a real expert in your entire ecosystem. So there's some really cool, just forward-thinking futures out there with data. So I love this. Data is growing, the field is growing, and I think finally businesses are starting to say, you know what? Our data is important. Our data is something we have to think about, we have to focus on, we have to put effort toward. I mean, except for Elon Musk, but everybody else tends to think that data and communications are very important. And I think that's really cool about SQL Server. Now, to bring it all together here, how do you get ahead? How do you stay up to date on all of these technologies? And something I've always thought of, it's kind of cheesy, I realize, but it's like the laugh, learn, love. Oh, I should have used that font. Learn, share, grow. I know it's a little bit fluffy here, but I really do, and this is the thing that Steve mentioned for the community as well, I believe that there's enough business out there for all of us, right? There really is. And even if other people have blogged something, you might think, oh, I can't give any useful information out there. It's already been blogged before. But that's not true. The more that you share information, the better off you're going to be in your career. So let me prove this with a lot of the community slides. So Alex, he basically said that finding the SQL, and I know where you are, Alex, you're over there. You can stand up if you want. Alex is like, thanks, Kimberly. But finding the SQL Server community was life-changing. Making that difference with all of these people and interacting and learning and talking about their experiences. It's amazing when you find so many people that have these common interests and common goals and desires. And it's just amazing how many people are willing to share, and sit down and just chat with you for a half an hour. In fact, Paul and I are going to spend the whole day at the community zone. So come by and see us and we'll chat. And
they scheduled us for the keynote.
And then the last session of the day. I'm pretty sure they intended that, right? Force them to stay at the, all day long. So we'll be over at the community zone and we'll hopefully see you. But, this is just an incredible point. And I've got a few more slides on this as well. Learning for life. I mean, another kind of cheesy, but I believe this, right? I made this slide, even though I do know Aaron, and I probably could have asked Aaron to make a slide, but he's like a big-time CEO now, so it's like, I'll make that slide. I actually took most of his quotes from Twitter over the last month or so.
Get them while you can.
I know, get them while I can. But these were all like between October 17th, October 11th, October 4th, and this last one was right at the end of October or the beginning of November. And you look at the quotes, the B.B. King quote, "The beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take it away from you." That is so true. And all that you learn, that you bring to the next company, right, is value. And you can prove that value when you go to those companies by talking about how you learn and how you